So, hi, everybody. I'm Dan Forbes. I am founder and host of the Lead with Giants community, which you will find not only here on Blab, but we started out on, LinkedIn. We have a group on LinkedIn, a group on Google+, a group on Facebook, and we're on Twitter with a tweet chat Mondays, 6 p.m. Central Time, always talking about leadership development, and personal development. And then one of our initiatives recently has been this Ask an Executive Coach show. And what I will do is ask some coaches and advisors and consultants from the Lead with Giants community to come in, take a seat, and we'll actually take questions from people who show up. So we invite you to be thinking about a question that you would like to ask about your business, your personal life, whatever. And most questions are about business, but it can be almost anything. There may be some areas that we don't want to go to. So, John, glad you're back and on camera. So what I'd like to do is, Lisa, introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, what you do, and maybe what field of expertise sort of you work in.
Oh, well, I'm Lisa Manyoky. I'm here on the East Coast in New Jersey, and I'm a coach. I'm a coach and a consultant. I find that I combine both of the best parts of each, consulting and coaching, and I work with professionals on presence. Making them look really good. On
present, making them look good and come across well, make a good impression is what it sounds like to me.
Yes.
Okay, great. John E. Smith. Who are you? John Smith, that's not a real name, is it? Isn't that like
it's not, but it's been working really well for the last few years. None of the federal agencies have found me yet, so it's a good. I am the strategic learner. I blog most regularly under that title, although I do guest blogging and articles on a few other places as well. And I do leadership and personal development coaching with an emphasis on adaptive change. And that's pretty much all I need to say right now. Okay. Lisa, hi. Nice to see a Jersey girl up there.
Hi, John. Nice to see you.
Yeah, absolutely. I always appreciate the insights that both of you guys share in the Lead with Giants community. So, again, I'm Dan Forbes. Lead with Giants is the name of my company. LeadWithGiantsCoaching.com is my coaching website. So I'm an executive coach based in Austin, Texas, but the coaching I do is primarily by telephone, so clients can be anywhere. I have a natural market in the real estate industry and financial services since I grew successful businesses in both of those areas. So as it turns out, most of my clients are in that area. But from CEOs to salespeople, I just love helping people get from point A to point B in their life and in their business. So again, thank you.
You left out the most important part of your biography. Isn't today sort of a special day? Aren't you like, I want to say 39 or something like that?
Yeah.
I know it's a biggie. It's a big number.
Yeah, almost. It's like 30-something times 2. Yes, today's my birthday. Don't know if I share that with any famous people. I need to look that up. I appreciate all the birthday wishes. Thank you for the props there, Scott. And yeah, today's my birthday. 63 today. I know I only look 43, but I'm enjoying my senior discounts at the movie theaters. most places now. So here's the format of the show. Thank you for those that are in the room. If someone has a question that you'd like some coaching about, we'd like you to come on board, ask the question. We'll take turns doing some coaching mojo with you to see if we can help move you forward. And then secondly, on the show, we actually sort of talk about coaching, the business of coaching, and different coaching styles and so forth. So if you have a question, you can pose it in the chat sidebar, although we would rather you take a seat and ask the question. But I know some people are shy, or their camera might be dark, or have some other problem. So if you'd like to take a seat, the seat's open. You can click call in, now is what it says, and take a seat, or you can pose your question in the sidebar. So, Lisa, you talked about helping people when it comes to presence. So if I'm asking you, well, what does that mean exactly? Can you tell me a little bit more specifically about what that means and maybe why that's important?
Well, until we understand what we put out there, we have no way to get the most out of what we're seeking in life or business. So I find that it's a simple combination of looking good, sounding good, being good, and doing good. And the last one, doing good, seems to trump most of the others.
Okay. All right. So presence is how you are coming across to others, how they perceive you.
Yes.
Right.
Go ahead,
John.
I have a question about that. Yeah, it's interesting to me because I love your litany there. Looking good, speaking good, and all that. I can't remember now how you said it, but it's well done. But I'm wondering, when you come to the doing good, what do you mean specifically by that? Because I come out of a nonprofit, mission-driven environment, and when we say doing good, we don't always mean the same thing that the hardcore business folks mean when they say doing good. So I'm curious about that.
Well, I have seen some really terrifically dressed professionals who are not articulate, or articulate professionals who are not terribly well dressed. And their performance is great. So if they're lacking in some of those other areas, I have found that those who do good, and that doesn't mean giving to charity or anything that's simple. I'm talking just a general way of being nice, giving the time of day. It sounds like a Hallmark card. And as simple as it is, those platitudes, the golden rule, they work wonders for our presence. They can make the difference between a person being well received or not. Despite credentials or wardrobe, it seems to be the most powerful one of the four.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. As you were talking, I was reminded there's another group that actually has produced a book called The Character-Driven Leader, or Character-Driven Leadership, I think is the correct title. And a lot of it dwells on that same thing. It's about doing good in that respect, acting ethically, acting nicely, playing nice with others, as they say. And boy, if there was ever a time when that's important, it's got to be right now. I mean, it's always been important, but more so maybe now than ever.
I love this topic. So this might be sort of the topic of our show today. Thank you, Lisa.
Okay.
So let's talk about some of those specifically. By the way, if anyone has a question that you'd like to ask, get some coaching about, come on, call in, take a seat, or pose it in the sidebar. So let's go back to those areas that you were talking about, presence. And I think the first one was looking good.
Looking good.
All right. So how others perceive you by the way that you look. Okay. Any advice?
Right. Well, we certainly can't
No, for me.
control how others perceive us, but we can shape it. So we need to understand our bodies, our faces, our best assets, and work with them. I mean, we're never going to be 6 feet tall if we're 5'2". I always joke around. I say I'm 5'2". I have a tall personality. So that's where I get my height. So whatever your gifts are, use them. And whatever's not working so well, camouflage it or find a way to at least live with it and make the best of it.
I think that's good advice. And I moved from Florida to Austin, Texas a year ago, and specifically came here for what I felt was a better business opportunity for my executive coaching practice, not to mention there was a 5-year-old grandbaby that was sort of pulling us here as well. But before launching my coaching practice, I was a financial advisor at Merrill Lynch. So every day was going to work, wearing a tie, having a jacket that I could put on whenever necessary as well to convey a certain presence to clients or prospects.
Right.
Since I moved to Texas and since really focusing on my executive coaching business, don't think I've worn a tie. So it's more casual. It's jeans. It's a shirt like this. I'll throw on a sports jacket sometimes if I'm going to a networking event. But that's intentional. So I've thought about, okay, what is the message that I want to convey about myself as a coach to others? And it really is being more like the guy that really isn't trying to put on airs, but it's just being honest and authentic and transparent about themselves. I would have worn this at Merrill Lynch, and with no tie if I could have gotten away with it, but I was pretty well scolded for showing up, without a tie.
But even if there's a uniform in the environment where you work, there are ways to dress in such a way that you do stand out a little bit. I mean, I remember one fella, he was very upset that he showed up at a big banking meeting and everyone else was wearing a gray suit and he had on a tan one. And I said, well, it's still a suit. But the uniform that had been expected, he defied it. And it made a difference because he was uncomfortable throughout the meeting and did not perform well.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting because I was thinking back to my military days. And I was an Army officer for a while, went through ROTC. And interestingly enough, two little things that came out of that have stuck with me that have to do with appearance and presentation. One is the first year I was in ROTC, I was on a college campus. Well, actually, I was on for 2 years. But anyway, that first year, one of the things that they drilled into us was whether you're in or out of uniform, you're still representing the program. Mm-hmm. And so always dress and act in a way that will make us proud that you're representing our program, whether you've got the uniform on or not, because uniform is easy. When you put a uniform on, I mean, a real uniform, I liked your statement about the uniform in your organization, because every organization has their cultural codes about what to wear and what not to wear. But in the military, it's a lot more specific. You're told exactly what to wear and when to wear it and all that. So those times outside, I think, are important. Even when you're in a less formal environment, I never dress down as much as some people I know dress down. I don't wear T-shirts unless I'm exercising. What you see now is pretty much what I wear every day, whatever, because I want to maintain that fit. It's sort of what Dan was saying. The other thing that I learned was when you do put on a uniform, and you're dressed exactly like everyone else, except for a few little insignias and rank and that type of thing, it still makes a difference how you wear the uniform.
Sure.
And that gets into simple things like having it fit right, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. But yeah, I think the presentation, and that's something that a lot of people just don't think about. They say, oh, I'm not into style or whatever, and they dismiss it as not important. So what you're doing is important.
It can be the difference.
I see. Excuse me. I see Transform Mindset. A coach has joined us, and I'm looking at her image, and it looks like a jacket and a scarf. Is that a scarf around your neck there? So the things that also that we portray, for example, on social media, the profile images and so forth. All those things convey a message. Now, so we're talking about presence. So mention those things again. That list that you had said. How we.
Yeah, my 4 pillars are look good.
Okay.
Look good.
Sound good.
Okay.
Be good, and do good.
Okay. All right. So, and we've been talking about looking good. Now, what we're not talking about is being something you are not.
No.
Right, because that's being inauthentic, that's being a fake, and people pretty well can smell that out, right?
They can, and I call that one of the visible invisibles. If there's any charade going on, whether it's dressing up for something that doesn't really suit you or in an environment where you really don't belong or that doesn't suit you, it'll show because it's exhausting to sustain a charade.
Right. Yeah. Let's talk about sounding good. By the way, anybody has a question that you want to ask of the coaches here, can be completely off topic, doesn't have to be a presence. It can be about the topic of presence. It could be on any topic whatsoever. Come on, call in, take a seat. Feel free to ask a question or maybe pose one in the chat. All right. So sounding good. What comes to my mind when I hear that is the vocabulary that we use. I'm a pretty simple guy. I write a blog. I write very simply because that's all I know. I'm probably maxing out my intelligence when I'm writing, and when I'm having conversations with people. I never think about how big of words can I throw out here to make myself sound important. What's a couple of things that's important about the way that we sound when it comes to presence?
Well, vocabulary is one, and I have found that the most pleasant conversations, whether written or spoken, are conversational. And most of us aren't going to use 5 diamond words all the time. We just relax. And that goes for writing as well. Grammar. I'm a stickler for grammar. I mean, you can have somebody making a great sentence and then comes a grammatical error that makes it looks like it's like a spot on a tie. It looks bad. The rest of the sentence or conversation becomes tainted.
Or mispronouncing a word that's really a pretty common word that everybody should know. One word that comes to my mind is Valentine's Day, not Valentine's Day. That would just popped in my mind there. But things like that makes people say, "What? You don't even know how to pronounce Valentine?" Those types of things. John, your thoughts?
I'm just thinking we're fighting the culture here on this one because in the same way that dressing over the years and decades has sort of moved to a less formal thing, also talking has as well. I mean, I teach part-time, and it is a constant battle between the students and I because they don't see the importance of using good grammar. They don't see the importance of spelling particularly, and they certainly don't always see the need to make a complete sentence out of their thoughts and to avoid what we call what do we call them? I'm blanking on the term. There's a term, but they're vague pronouns. That was the term. There, in almost all the spellings you can imagine, it, that, those type of things. They're words we sprinkle throughout our conversations, but it's easy to lose somebody when you use a lot of vague pronouns.
Yeah. By the way, we've got some coaches in the room. If there's a coach in the room, consultant, advisor, you'd like to take a seat, join in, call in, and share your thoughts and ideas on this topic of leadership presence or presence, not leadership presence, on presence. Feel free to do so. There's a couple of people that come to my mind that I'm connected with on social media, and sometimes I have to grab a dictionary in order to really understand what they're saying. And I come away thinking, is it me? Is it them? What is that? But it makes me uncomfortable. What do you have to say about a situation like that, Lisa?
But if it's their nature, there are just some people who are really bright. For example, I have a colleague. He's a very renowned coach who has a history in psychoanalysis. And the words he uses are very clinical. And I pulled him aside once. I said, listen, if I have to look up the word, then your colleagues in China are dead in the water because they have no idea what you're talking about. So it's not a matter of dumbing it down. It's a matter of just keeping it conversational. Big words are great if that's how you typically speak, and those to whom you are speaking hear it that way and enjoy it. But they can actually be boundary or stopgaps for conversation.
Yeah. All right. So what I'm hearing is be yourself. Don't try to use big words in order to impress other people, be something you're not, and don't necessarily dumb down your vocabulary to another level because, again, you're not being who you really are.
Right.
John?
There's a quote, and I'm not sure if it was Einstein or somebody equally smart like that said it, but the Googlers in the group can tell me this. But it goes something like this. If you can't explain a complex problem simply, you don't understand it well enough. And I think that enters into the conversation here. It's not just a matter of the type of words you use. I have a somewhat of a psychotherapy background myself, and I can use those big, long medical term related words. And sometimes I do, but I also have the ability to explain what is sometimes a complex psychological issue or dynamic in simple enough terms that other people can understand it easily without any background at all. And I think that that's critical for communication, no matter what you do or who you're talking to. You can have the very complex thoughts. You can use the large terms. I know in my classes, I am frequently saying, use a term, and then I say, what that actually means is this. And then I give them the much simpler real world explanation for what that word means. So part of that's teaching them some vocabulary, but part of it is also making sure they understand what I'm talking about. Yeah. And I think as coaches, we have to do that just as we're talking.
We have to remember too, as coaches, a lot of us are speaking on the phone. We need to have phone presence. I mean, there are some people who have flat inflection or their volume is not high. Are they peppy on the phone? Are they a calming presence? Given that much work is being done on the phone, we need to understand what we put out there when we speak by phone so that we're affecting whoever's on the end of it the way we need to.
Now, what if you have a real annoying voice?
Then you can talk on the phone.
What do you do then?
You may not get clients or keep.
Well, it might hurt. It goes to what you were talking about earlier, I think comes back now. There are some things we can't change. If you're 5'2", or like in my case, I just found out I'm 5'8". I always thought I was 5'10", but now the doctor says I'm 5'8". And I will never be tall enough to play college or professional basketball. And I'm not athletically skilled at all. Yeah, so those are things I will never do. I can't do those things. And no matter what motivational speaker I go to hear and how much I pay to have them tell me that, I'm not going to be able to do that. What I can do is, if I have an annoying voice, I can try and moderate the voice. I can learn different speech patterns. I can learn to identify when my speech is being irritating to someone else and figure out some way to change it so that it's less so. So I think part of the whole change thing involves knowing what you can change. It's sort of like the Serenity Prayer, if you know that one. Identifying those things we can change, letting go of the things we can't, and the most important part, being smart enough to know the difference.
Right. Yeah. The thing that comes to my mind as you said that, John, is for example, using either an uptick or a downtick at the end of a sentence. So if I say, I'm Dan Forbes, lead with Giants coaching. Or if I say, I'm Dan Forbes, lead with Giants coaching. That uptick is sort of like the Valley Girl type.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Ending sentences with that up inflection, that uptick, really conveys an uncertainty, and that you're not really sure of yourself in what you're saying. So back a couple of careers in my life, I was a real estate broker. I was a realtor. Then I owned my own company. But I would actually rehearse scripts and things that I internalized so that it didn't sound like a script when I said it, but it was a way of me thinking through what did I want to say to people regarding certain topics. And I remember at times focusing on using a downtick and also using something called an embedded command. Have you guys ever heard about that?
No.
All right. So, for example, if I'm a realtor and I'm talking with you, and I say, when you list your home with me, blah, 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 I do this. If I say, when you list your home with me, here's 10 things I'm going to do.
Oh, okay.
So I left a little pause. I emphasized the words, list your home with me. I paused again, and then I went on. So subconsciously, our mind picks up these commands. So someone that's in sales can learn techniques like this that helps them be a better salesperson. So when you list your home with me, blah, blah, blah. When you hire me as your coach, see, there's a command I'm giving someone. Now, I don't even think about that today, and I'm not really using that in trying to further my coaching business. Is that being inauthentic, or can you do that authentically?
Well,
Lisa,
you can do that. However, you also need to know who you're speaking to. The astute person who sees through that might say, all right, I caught you. I know what you're trying to do, and could be annoyed by it. So it really depends on how well you assess the recipient of your information and whether or not it's appropriate to deliver it in that way. Some might not even like a cloaked command. So it takes a great deal of speaking intuition, but it will serve you very well if you master it.
Yes, and also, so if you learn that to use that, so that, well, I'll just say you really internalize it. It becomes a part of you and your vocabulary, and it's not just a trick. So Scott in the sidebar says, when coaching entrepreneurs about pitching their business, maybe they're talking to venture capitalists or whatever, he talks about practice, and being aware of the words that you use. I'm coaching a top performing realtor in my market right now, who is actually giving a speech at an association tomorrow, and she's shared that speech with me. We rehearsed it and practiced it. I'm not a speech coach, but I was a pastor for 20 years and stood in the pulpit every Sunday, did an awful lot of speaking. It's like second nature to me. And so we were able to, sort of sharpen that up a little bit. So talking about presence, we've talked about, how you look, how you sound, and then the other is being, right?
Yes.
Being good.
Performance.
Okay.
So in other words, let's say you're looking for a job and you come in and you're dressed to the nines, you look wonderful in your suit or your dress, and you're well spoken and all, and you get that job, and then your feet go up on the desk. So some people do the part to actually conquer the contest. They get the job or the girl or whatever, and then they relax. So performance, or you'll never be saved by a wardrobe and a great sentence if your performance is lousy.
Yeah, it strikes me that performance, we use that term, and I tend to first think of it as, okay, a performance is when you go on stage and do something, and it's sort of like it's a separate act than how you are everywhere else. But you're using it in a totally different way, and it seems much more to reinforce the idea that we have to become natural in whatever we're doing so that it really is us. So that, for example, using your example of getting a job, how we are during the interview process and leading up to the offer should not be different than how we are after the offer.
Right.
There should be credibility. There's another term that I can't think of right now that applies here. Congruent. Our behavior has to be congruent, and that sort of leads to some of the discussions we've had about practicing whatever we need to practice enough to where it becomes very natural and really is part of us, as opposed to a technique or a strategy or a device that is obvious to others.
I think too, it's talking about results, right? So for example, for people that have resumes out there, look at your resume and then go through it and mark out all the BS that's in there. I
wouldn't be left with anything.
all the stuff that gets put in resumes sometimes that makes people sound wonderful. Or look at people's LinkedIn profiles, and then, boy, if you're promising that, hopefully your results are going to follow, because if you get hired based upon the good sales job that you did, right, and then you don't produce the results, that's where you're going to run into trouble, right, Lisa?
Big trouble, because then it's disappointing for the employer, and you're in a job that you really have no right having. And some people are not meant to be CEOs. Some people are just meant to be the mail guy. That's not a good or a bad thing. It's just that we're not all geared toward every echelon in the corporate world or in the coaching profession, wherever. We need to find our space and then inhabit it, and really inhabit it.
I've got a brief anecdote about that. So I was talking with a CEO of an HR company, and they had hired someone, and they suspected her computer skills really wasn't as good as what her resume said. So they set her down in front of a computer. Now I use a Mac, so I'm not sure if it's still there, but with a PC on the screen, there was a little button down the left on the screen that said Start. Is it still there now? Like with Explorer or whatever it is, it said Start.
It's a little window now.
Yeah. Okay. So they set her down in front of the computer and said, "Okay, start the computer." And so she looks at the screen. She sees the little word "Start" over there in the left-hand corner, and she takes her finger and goes and pushes the word start. Okay. I mean, she knew absolutely nothing about using a computer. Again, the congruence between what the resume says and what you really know.
And the resume, just a quick tip for everybody, the resume should simply not be a listing of the things you can do. You always need to finish the sentence, which says, I know XYZ, and in doing so, accomplish whatever.
Yeah.
You have to finish the sentence by saying what you did by knowing that and what you contributed to that organization. The second half of the listing has to be there.
Chrissy says that with Windows 10 you can touch the screen now. So I guess they fixed that problem. Yeah, that was some time ago. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we've been here about 30 minutes. Really haven't taken a question from anybody. We have had a good discussion about presence. So to me, again, I'm going to go back to my idea that presence is how other people perceive us, and it's how we can actually shape that by the way we come across. So we've talked about how you look, how you sound, how you behave, how you do things, and we talked about doing good as well. Any last thoughts on this topic about presence? Lisa or John? Oh, I see Deepak Chopra and I share the same birthday. And I tell you, his advice to everybody is the same. Meditate. Exactly the same. Now, he's a guy I can listen to and come away scratching my head saying, that is deep. I'm not really sure what that means, but it sounds really important. Anyway, any last thoughts about presence? We're going to wrap up our discussion. Thank you, Lisa, for being on the show. Thank you, John. Again, Lisa, sort of do an exit about yourself. How can people contact you too?
Oh, my website is lisamanyoky.com, so that's easy.
Except for spelling Manyoky.
Oh, you never forget that one. It's M-A-N.
Oh, that's an easy one to spell.
It's just like it sounds. It's M-A-N-Y-O-K-Y.
It's unique.
Yes, it is. And I am always willing to answer questions from anybody who calls about it. Always.
Okay, John, how can people reach you?
They can reach me at strategiclearner@gmail.com. They can go to my blog site, which is the Strategic Learner. They can connect with me on LinkedIn, Google+, Twitter, Facebook, et cetera, and so forth.
And the only John Smith out there, sure.
No, but I am the only one that uses, well, I'm not the only one that uses the middle initial E, but using that middle initial is intentional to cut me out from the million other. And then also the Strategic Learner.
What does the E stand for?
Excellent.
Excellent.
Edward.
Okay. Yeah. See, I use my middle initial in my Twitter handle because someone else already had just Dan.
Yeah.
So, and people can connect with me at leadwithgiantscoaching.com and a lot of other places on the web out there. By the way, all of my social media profiles has all of my contact information, email, phone numbers. I try to make it easy for people to find me. All right. So I'm going to stop the recording. Hang on, guys. Let me come back.